Welcome to the Unshakeable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and lots of gratitude that we welcome Pat O, who's come to share on the topic of alcohol/drugs with the great Persuader for up to about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for the Q&A portion of the meeting. With that, Pat, it's over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My name is Pat, and I'm an addict. Grateful to be sober, grateful to be here. It's always an honor and privilege to be asked to do anything Cocaine Anonymous. I love Cocaine Anonymous. I got sober in AA, and I don't know how it is where you're at, but getting sober in AA, being a crack addict, was a little tough. You know what I mean? They were like, "Whoa, we don't want to hear about crack cocaine," and I didn't understand. I was like, but what's the problem? And they talked about singleness of purpose and all kinds of things. And I was like, this is too strict, but I got sober in AA, and my structure's in AA, and I love AA. But when I spoke at my first CA meeting, man, my heart was cracked wide open. You know what I mean? I was actually at an AA meeting, and I had this old timer. I got done speaking. This old timer, he said, "Oh, you would be great speaking at CA. Would you speak at a CA meeting?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I did a lot of crack cocaine. I love to do that. And so I went to Phoenix and I spoke. And long story short, I remember speaking in Phoenix, and dude, my heart was just like boom, wide open. I was like, "Whoa!" I shared things I never shared from the podium before, or with another human being. And so I love CA when I'm asked. It's always an honor and a privilege. Thank you, Young, for asking me to participate in my recovery. I think Sherry's on here. I heard her voice. I want to thank her for stepping in last time. I was caught up in a blizzard. I didn't even know what a blizzard was. I had my bag packed. I was ready to go to leave the convention I spoke at. And they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Going to the airport." They're like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, 50-mile-an-hour winds. I was like, "Oh, okay, great." And so I was stuck there for 4 days. So that was great. But God obviously had a purpose for me in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Not sure what it was, but I went out into the world and I tried to put a smile on other people's faces, and Cocaine Anonymous taught me that. Cocaine Anonymous taught me to go out there and be the love and the light that's within, upon this world. And what time do you say I end? So for the questions and answers, I didn't hear that part.
Got about 38 minutes left.
Oh, 38 minutes. There's a timer. Okay, great. So, alcohol and drugs, was the great Persuader. Young asked me what a topic I wanted, and, I don't know, weeks ago. And I always think it's weird, like for me, it's weird. It's like, oh, well, let me give you the topic on most education on, have the most education on that I can really break it down. And for me, that's like a lot of ego. And I need to separate myself from the ego. I like to place myself in a position where it's storytelling. It's off the cuff. It's off the, allow God to come in and speak through me. And so I asked him to give me the topic this morning, and then he sent me the topic, and then I was like, man, I should have picked the topic a month ago, and so the great Persuader, it's an easy one for me. It's an easy, alcohol and drugs drove me into the rooms. I when I got here, I wasn't an alcoholic. I got sober in AA. Alcohol wasn't a problem. Crack cocaine was a problem. Shooting methamphetamine was a problem. Shooting heroin was a problem, right? Like clearly, like I was having a lot of consequences as a result of my drug addiction. When I got sober, on 10/23/02, October 23rd of 2002 is my sobriety date. And when I got sober, I went into Alcoholics Anonymous at this detox, and it was such a like singleness of purpose detox. Like they didn't even let drug addicts in there, And so I told them, I said, they're like, "You have to tell them you drink," and I'm like, "But I don't want to lie." And my sponsor started laughing at me. He's like, "Oh, you've been lying all these years and you don't want to lie about getting sober?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a good point, And so I went in there and I was like, I said, I have a really bad drinking problem. And so I go in there and this is AA guys, and I was like, "Dude, I'm not alcoholic." You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a crack addict, and they read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with me. They sat down and they read word for word, and they talked about things like, what they did was they turned statements into questions. And he's like, "When you drink alcohol, what's the effect produced for you?" And I was like, well, I don't know, it takes the anxiety away, right? Man, that makes the mind kind of quiet down. I don't seem to be so afraid of life. He said, "Oh, that's great." He said, "So alcohol is just a solution for you, right?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, yeah, oh yeah, it's a solution for my life. Yeah, actually, yeah." And he said, "Oh, let's talk about that." And so we started talking about all these things, all this insecurity and this fear I've had my whole life. Like today, like I can manufacture out of a fear, I can manufacture some feelings. You know what I mean? Yeah, I got like a factory in here, and it's called the feeling factory. And I get afraid, and then I build a case, and I'm like, yep. Yeah, yep. No one really likes you in life. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're kind of a loser. They're all gonna find out that you're just fooling them. You know what I mean? And next thing you know, like I take that thought on a thought on a thought on a thought, and this factory produces all these stories, and all of a sudden I'm like feeling sad, and I'm feeling not good enough, and I'm feeling like a loser, and I'm feeling unlovable. And from that, all these feelings come up, and I'm sad, and I'm lonely, and I'm depressed, and I'm 23 years sober in my room with the covers covered over me. Right. And I can do that today. And I've had that my whole life. You know what I mean? My whole life I've been there since I was a little guy. And when I put alcohol into my body, what happened was it just like, life seemed to be able to live. I felt like it gave me power, actually. You know what I mean? Alcohol gave me that sense where I could cock my shoulders back and put my head up, and I seemed to be in the game. And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "But what kind of consequences started coming from alcohol and drugs?" And I was like, "Well, I went to jail, and I left my house at 17. My mom kicked me out of the home when I was 17. My first criminal charge, I was 16 years old. I took a strong arm robbery case for robbing the cops. I got in trouble on a DUI, which is driving under the influence. I got in trouble for methamphetamine pipe paraphernalia. Got in trouble with possession of heroin. I was living on the streets. I hadn't eaten. When I got sober, I was 98 pounds. He said, "Oh, you had all these consequences in your life, and yet you picked back up." And I was like, "Well, yeah." I dropped out of school, and I started listening to I went to college, and I dropped out. He said, "Oh, okay. So why'd you do that? If alcohol and drugs aren't a problem in your life, then why'd you do that?" Because I was holding on to my right to drink and use. You know what I mean? I was like trying to convince him that drugs and alcohol weren't the problem. And looked at me and said, "You're absolutely right. They're not the problem." Right? But when you're sober, do you ever make a commitment to not drink or use? I was like, "Well, yeah." I remember one time I told my mom, I said, "Mom, I need help. I think if I go back to school, I think things will work out better." And so she said, "Okay, where do you want to go?" And I said, "I want to go to San Francisco." And she said, "Oh, you want to go to San Francisco?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to be a chef." I think if I went to college and I could be a chef. And she said, "Well, you don't even have a high school diploma." And I was like, "Oh, I should probably get the high school diploma first." She said, "Yeah, get the high school diploma first." And so I went and I got a GED, and I was living in downtown San Francisco. She bought me this studio apartment, and and I think that normal living's the solution for alcohol and drug use. All I need is a job, and if I get a girlfriend, everything will work out. And I gotta get a girlfriend, and so I didn't get one of them, but I did get the GED. And I'm sitting in my apartment on the 16th floor in San Francisco in the Tenderloin. I didn't know that the Tenderloin's a bad area to live in. I don't know that. I just, we're not from San Francisco. And so I go downstairs one day, and I realize that these guys are smoking crack cocaine right out my front door. And by this time, dude, I've already been doing meth. I've already been doing cocaine. I haven't smoked it yet, just snorting it, and so that's a justifier, right? You just smoke, snort it, it'll be bad if you smoke it. And if you shoot it, you're definitely going to be bad. And so just snort it. And so I wasted a lot of cocaine because not all of it went, anyways. But so I'm in my apartment, and I'm like, you know what? I just got my GED. I completed the test, and that's like equivalent. You get like a test you take in America to get equivalency for your high school diploma. So now I got a high school diploma, and I signed up to go to chef school, and I said, I'm gonna go take a stroll down to the Civic Center and get a little dime bag of weed, because weed isn't that bad, right? I justify that if I do hard drugs, then it's a problem. And so I get a little bag of weed. You know what I mean? I go home and I roll myself a joint, and I burn. I can smoke in the weed, and oh man, woo! Why'd I wait so long? I've been like 26 days or something, and one more time, alcohol and drugs worked, well, what I didn't realize was that when I put one of anything in, I was going to lose the power of choice. But I, for the next week, controlled and enjoyed my marijuana use. And you ever try that? It worked for a little bit of time. And, but just smoking weeds, for me, it's kind of boring. You know what I mean? I was like, and I get thirsty, I get that dry mouth. You know what I mean? And, and you can only eat so much food. You start gaining weight, that's not attractive, and so there's this liquor store right downstairs. Now I'm only 20. You gotta be 21 to buy booze in California. But I went to go get tacos. And the liquor store was like, beer, right? Because beer is, hard alcohol is bad. You know what I mean? When I drink tequila, I usually like my clothes come off when I fight or something. You know what I mean? But you can drink beer, now not knowing that I lost the power of choice, not thinking, here I am going to control my alcohol intake by drinking some St. Pauli's Girl beer, right? And so I did. I hustled it up, I got the beer, went upstairs, and I got a joint, and I got some beer, and now, like, I'm smoking weed, and I'm drinking beer, and no longer I have a dry mouth. Like, it's a solution, you know what I mean? Beer is a solution for your marijuana use. And I justify that this is 100% okay, right? I don't know what alcoholism and or addiction looks like. And so because at this time, my heroin use was what kind of got me to the bottom, where I was like, whoa, and I sobered up on my own, and now I'm in San Francisco, and now I'm just smoking weed, and I'm drinking beer, and I like to go to raves, and so, I decided I'm going to go to this rave down the street. Now I know when I go to raves, I like to eat ecstasy and eat LSD, and eat some mushrooms. I know I like to do these kind of things. But I'm just going to go because I like the music, which is true. I love the music. I mean, my whole garage is full of records. I got turntable, and that's justifiably why I'm going. And I go to the rave, and this girl like, hey, free ecstasy. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my chance to get a girlfriend, and I get ecstasy. And sure enough, hit the ecstasy, and next to the bag of mushrooms, and 4 days later, you know what I mean? I'm in my apartment coming to with a big old line of cocaine, and I'm like, whoa, woo, bam. And, next thing you know, man, never made it to college, right? Never made it to college, and man, then I cleaned up again. I was going to be a chef again, and I went and I got like 60 days in school, and I thought, man, these guys aren't treating me right. You know what I mean? And, they're kind of hard. If you go to chef school, they're kind of hard on you. And so I justified one more time about picking up, and I picked up again, and boom, off to the races I go. And I'm sitting in jail thinking, dude, I don't want to end up in jail. Like, this is bad. Like, I don't like jail. I don't like people telling me what to do. And I don't like sleeping with a bunch of dudes, and like, oh my God, this is tough. And there's all this, I don't want to be here anymore. And I need to straighten my life up. I don't know what to do. And I don't know how to straighten my life up. My mom, who was sober, she's like, you need to just go to AA. And I'm like, dude, but AA is not the solution for me. Like, I'm not alcoholic. And every time I get out of jail, I drink alcohol. And every time I drink alcohol, I snort cocaine. And every time I snort cocaine, I shoot up meth. And every time I shoot up meth, you know what I mean? I'm doing heroin to come off the meth because I'm getting psychosis from meth induced. And I don't understand what's wrong with me. And I end up back in jail, and I'm desperate, and I'm alone, and I'm sitting in jail, and I'm thinking, what the hell? How'd this happen again? And what do I got to do? And my mom's like, just go to AA. And I'm like, I'm not alcoholic. You know what I mean? Like, something's wrong with me, but like alcohol, being alcoholic isn't it. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm just bodily and mentally different from my fellows, but alcohol, don't realizing at the time, is a solution, because every time I drink alcohol, man, the great pain goes away. Every time I drink alcohol, I just can sit back in the chair and just go, man, this life ain't so bad anymore, you know? And I drink the alcohol one more time, and I smoke weed, because I'm not going to do the cocaine. I do the cocaine. I'm smoking crack, and now I'm downtown Los Angeles on Skid Row, and I'm buying crack, and I'm getting the straight pipe, and I'm getting the chore boy, and I'm sitting in an alley all alone, just just fucking hitting the crack by myself, man, and I run out of money in Skid Row, and I start to do some things that I hope no one ever has to do, but I start selling myself for one more hit of crack cocaine, and I end up back in jail, and I'm disgusted, and I want to kill myself, and my mom says, just go to AA, and it's the alleys that's the problem, you know what I mean? Skid Row's the problem. Alcohol's never the problem. I drink alcohol, and I'm smoking crack in that alley, doing the same thing I did a month earlier, and I would bounce back in between San Francisco, and I'd bounce back between Los Angeles, and I just do this dance, and I ended up getting a job at the YMCA, as a Young Men's Christian Association, at an elementary school after school program, and I think normal living's the solution for addiction. And this time I got a girlfriend, and this time I got a place to live, and this time I got a job, the best job I had ever had in my life, and I'm on top of the game. I'm on top of the world, man. I'm looking down thinking, man, those guys got it bad, man. I escaped Skid Row. I escaped the Tenderloin, man. I escaped that life. And I'm thanking my girlfriend for this life she gave me, and she brought me back to health, and I'm watching these elementary school kids, and I'm the assistant director, 45 days clean and sober. And I'm pushing this little boy on a swing when the thought crossed my mind that a bag of heroin would be a good idea. Last thing I remember, making the call. Next thing I came to, I was overdosed in that elementary school bathroom. That little second grade boy found me there. And he said, Pat, what happened? Like, for the first time in my life, I couldn't explain what happened. Before, I could always blame it on my anxiety or my depression, or life isn't fair and it's your fault and it's the police's fault. And I always had a reason, and I can always explain why. And that day I looked at that second grade boy, and I said, I don't know what happened, And for the first time in my life, I could really see like how my behavior affected another human being. And I ended up going to treatment, and I went to treatment, and I fell in love with treatment. I fell in love with a girl in treatment is what happened. That's all that happened for me in treatment. They gave me a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they coined me out most likely to succeed. And I'm on my way to recovery, and I'm going to go to sober living with my girlfriend, and I'm on the plane to go to Hawaii to go to sober living. And the thought crossed my mind that a Heineken would be a good idea. On my way to sober living with my sober girlfriend, going to be a sober man, the thought crosses my mind that Heineken would be a good idea. And I did. Boom. I had no defense, man. No defense against the first one. I had no steps. I had no sponsorship. I had no CA. I had no AA. I had nothing. I had a lot of self-knowledge. And the big book talks about self-knowledge avails us nothing. Nothing. Zero. And I was without defense against that first one, man. Boom, I drank it, and 12 or 13 Heinekens later, I landed in Hawaii and get off the plane, and I said, I'll go to sober living tomorrow, man. And I didn't go to sober living. I ended up back on Skid Row, selling myself for one more hit of crack cocaine. And I came 2-3 days before I got sober, crawled out of a motel sexually assaulted for the 12th time. And the only solution I have is to kill myself, because AA and CA doesn't work. Doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, I went there. You know what I'm saying? I went to your meetings. I met a guy named Isaac. He tried to be my sponsor. You know what I'm saying? I even called him twice. I'm like, yo, what's up? He's like, meet me at the meeting. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not as bad as you, Isaac. You know what I'm saying? And Andrew calls me. He's like, hey, we're going to fellowship. I'm like, yeah, loser. No thanks, Andrew. Not doing the fellowship. You know what I mean? And I'd hear Maddie. She would talk about God, and Ross was there. He was happy, joyous, and free. Sherry was there, happy, grateful Sherry. And I thought, these guys are losers. You know what I'm saying? And so it didn't work. My sponsor told me. He said it didn't work because you didn't do it. And he's like, you know what? I want you to keep your mouth shut about it didn't work because you didn't do it. It's 12 steps. You did 0 steps. And he said to me, so why don't you do what we do and you'll get what we get? And I thought, what is it that you get? And when I come to learn is that I get what this little old lady, well, I just use Sherry as an example, but her name was Peggy, happy, joyous, and free Peggy. You know what I mean? She had like 50 years sober, man, and she was happy, joyous, and free. And I can tell you, if you're new, what I've been able to get is happy, joyous, and free. You know what I'm saying? Like, today, right here, right now, happy, joyous, and free. And why is that? Right? Because I'm coming to you guys. I'm being honest about my story. We tell our stories here, right? Spirituality for me is an experience. And the experience right here, right now is me telling my story. You know what I mean? I can know this book. I was a big book thumper for a period of time. I know lots of quotes in this book. I can use this as a weapon. I can use the 12 traditions as a weapon. I can beat this thing over your head. I can force you into submission. I can get you to go, oh my God, I'm alcoholic, but do you really believe it? The longest journey we go is from our head to my heart, right? It's 8 inches. It's the most painful thing I've ever experienced. It's an experience that I must have. And right here, right now, happy, joyous, and free. How did I get to a place from Skid Row, suicidal, wanted to kill himself, takes one more drink, blacks out for 3 days, comes to smoking crack with a dude that's disgusting, gross. And I come to and I'm like, I'm going to kill myself, or I call my mom and ask for help. And how do I get from there to here? Right? 12 steps, introduced to a God I don't believe in when I'm brand new, introduced to the fellowship, which I can't stand. You know what I mean? I always say if you can survive the fellowship, you'll stay sober, service opportunities, you know what I mean? Service opportunities, my sponsor was big about the 3 sides of the triangle, unity, service. Oh, you can't see it. My thing's blurred, but unity, service, and recovery, right? The first legacy being unity, right? Like, I need you in order for me to stay sober. And so my sponsor said, I alone am not going to keep you sober. I don't have the power to keep myself sober, to let alone to keep you sober. He said, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the meeting tonight, and you're going to meet 5 new people. And you're going to get 5 numbers from those people. And I was like, but I don't want to know those people, And he said, well, if you want what we have, you'll get what we get. And I didn't know what he had that was so hot, except that he had a Porsche and he lived on the beach. And I wanted a Porsche and I wanted to live on the beach. So I went to the meeting and I was like, I went and met 5 new people. Hey, my boy Charles, good to see you, brother. And I go and I show up at the meeting, you know what I mean? I'm like, hi, Tam. I go, hi, I'm Pat. And Tam goes, I'm Tam. I go, oh, nice to meet you. Out of here. You know what I mean? I did my little job, I did the thing. And then I go, oh, hi, I'm Pat. And then Daz says, hi, I'm Daz. I go, okay, I'm out of here. And then I meet 5 new people. And then I talk to my sponsor. He goes, oh my God. He said, you met 5 new people. He goes, but did you get their numbers? And I was like, no, I didn't get their numbers. He goes, well, then how are you going to be connected to the fellowship? I go, I'll see him at the meeting. He goes, I want you to go back tomorrow and go get their phone numbers. So I did. I went and got all your phone numbers. And I go, what do I do with these phone numbers? He goes, now you call them. Right? This is like how lost in the mind I was. Like, I didn't even realize how to have a relationship with another human being. I didn't know. And so my sponsor says, you call them and I go, well, what do I say? Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, they're sober and I'm not. What do I say? He goes, alcoholic drug addicts, they love to talk about themselves. Just call them and ask them how they're doing. They'll talk forever. And so sure enough, I did. I call and I go, hey, Daz, this is Pat. I met you at the meeting last night. how are you? And then Daz would talk for like an hour. I'm just sitting there thinking, oh man, is Daz ever going to be quiet? Like I need to go. I had nowhere to go, but I had somewhere to go. Those days, and then I'd call, Ross and, hey, how are you? And then Ross talk for an hour. Next thing you know, like half the day went by, and so I go back, hey, sponsor, I called him. He goes, okay, great. He goes, show up at the next meeting. He goes, hey, I want you to go meet 5 new people and get 5 new numbers and call all 10 tomorrow. I was like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. And so what happened was over time, right? Like I didn't show up to the meeting. And then all of a sudden, Daz and Ross call me. Hey, where were you? And I thought to myself, I'm thinking, if I wanted you to know, I'd have let you know. I didn't say that. I was like, oh, I had to go to work. And they were like, hey, we missed you at the meeting last night. Remember that feeling? That feeling, man? Someone even noticed that you weren't there. Nobody noticed that I was there or wasn't there for a really long time. And what happened through the unity of Cocaine Anonymous was that I started to be accountable to a group of people I didn't even like. You know what I mean? I didn't even like you guys. I have a character defect of people pleasing. 7th step, my creator. I'm now willing that you should have all of me, the good and the bad. Here, God, here's all of me, all of my assets and all of my liabilities. Leave me with what I need to be of love and service to you and my fellows. And so my character defect of people pleasing and wanting my sponsor to like me and wanting Daz to like me and wanting Ross to like me, right? I continue to show up to Cocaine Anonymous, right? And so what happened was he said, okay, the second side of the triangle, which is our second legacy, is service. He said, you need to get a commitment. And I was like, why do I got to get a commitment? He said, because your whole life you've been a taker. And what we're going to do here in Cocaine Anonymous is turn you into a giver. I thought maybe I'd become the Dalai Lama or something, He said, nope. He said, your job is to sweep the floor after the meeting. And I was a cleanup boy, and then I was the greeter, and I'm standing in the green like, hi, I'm Pat. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I don't know shit, and then Keith's laughing. He's like, yeah, that's a good one. And then Keith go grab all his sponsees. And next thing you know, he brought all his sponsees and, hey, meet Pat, I'm Pat. I'm an alcoholic. I don't know shit, And then I was a cleanup guy. And then, oh man, I remember they voluntold me to be the literature guy. You know what voluntold is? You know what I mean? The group conscious. You guys ever do that? Where you really want your sponsee to have a commitment, but he doesn't want it. And then you go, oh yeah, Pat will take it, And then they all go, okay, great, Pat, you're the new literature guy. And so I was voluntold the literature guy. And what I didn't realize was that I had been complaining about the literature table and how like disgusting it was and how Danny wasn't doing a good job being the literature guy. And so they said, oh, if you don't think it's good enough, why don't you take the commitment? I didn't know that at the time, but that's what happened. And so I don't know, you guys are obsessive overthinkers, you know what I mean? And so I was going to have the best literature rack ever, and I went and got a new rack because their rack was old, and I went and got all brand new literature and put it in there, and then I set it up, and I'm so proud of my rack. I'm like, this is the best rack ever, and no one even came to go look at it, and I thought, man, these guys are selfish at Cocaine. They didn't even look at my rack, and I was complaining to my sponsor, and he said, oh, that's a beautiful rack. He said, man, I'm glad that you're taking pride in your own recovery. Oh, what the heck? I didn't even realize, you know what I mean? I didn't even realize that I was taking pride in my own recovery. And next thing you know, like I didn't want to go to the meeting, but I was the water boy, and I was like, I was going to go on this date with this girl that didn't even like me. I didn't even know she wanted to go on the date. I just assumed so I wasn't going to go to the meeting, in hopes that she would go with me. And, you guys understand, right? And so like, what happened was I was like, well, I can't do that. I got to go to the meeting because I'm the water boy. And if they don't have water, they're going to be parched. And so I need to go to the meeting. And what happened was that I started to have purpose in Cocaine Anonymous, right? I started to be accountable through the unity. I started to have purpose through their second legacy, which is service. And I started to feel a part of something. Right? The steps are great. I hear all the time, there's so much focus on, we need to get someone through the first step. We need to get them through the first step. We need to identify their power. We need to do all this stuff. I was doing the steps while doing this, but this is a 3-side triangle, right? The triangle, strongest geometrical shape, equal in all lengths and degrees, right? Equal, right? If I only do 2 sides of the triangle, if I only do service and unity and no recovery, that triangle is going to collapse. If I only do recovery and service and no unity, the triangle is going to collapse. And so what happened was I started to notice that I was clean and sober as a direct result of my connection to you guys and the service before I could see it in my recovery, in myself through the 12 steps. Right? But I was doing the 12 steps and he talked to me. He said, oh man, we're going to do recovery. I made amends 4 days sober. That's how busy my sponsor was. He was dying of cancer and he was at that detox, reading this book every day with me. Boom, reading it because he didn't want to die of alcoholism before he died of cancer. Huh? He said to me, he said, Pat, you saved my life. I looked at him. I said, you saved my life. What the heck? How did I save your life? You know? And he said, Pat, when you called your mom and asked for help and your mom called me, I just gotten off the phone with my doctor that told me I had stage 4 cancer and I had 6 months to live. He said, I knew if I didn't treat my alcoholism, I wasn't going to make it 6 months. So I went and picked you up and took you to detox. I've been sitting here reading the book with you. He said, I was going to kill myself that day when I found out that information, you know? Huh. And, yeah, rest in peace, Jack Orris. He just passed away this year of that cancer that he had 23 years ago. And it reminds me that like the information and news that we get, man, I catastrophize that stuff like that. You know what I mean? That manufacturing mind, that factory I talked about in my mind, you know what I mean? I catastrophize things to the worst, you know? And the worst information that he got at that time in his life, man, it didn't happen 22 years later, you know, but, and so he took me through the steps and what happened for me was that my body and my mind and my spirit through the 3 legacies that are on that triangle, man, became one. I became usefully whole to other people. You know, I wanted to get a girlfriend and I didn't know how to get one and I got one. You know what I mean? I was like, hey, it was like fishing or something. Like I just caught it or something, you know. And but she got pregnant too. I don't know how that happened, but that happened. And but I remember telling my sponsor, I said, why do I got to do all this service work? You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm doing all this service work and I'm focusing on all these people that don't have to do as much as I do. You guys relate to this? Some heads bobbing, you know what I mean? Like I was complaining. I was like, dude, these people in CA, they're selfish. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't do things around here. I'm always got a cleanup guy. I'm always got a setup guy. And my sponsor said, he told me he can turn me into a giver. And I'll tell you what, 10% of the people around here do 90% of the work. And what I learned was this. I learned that if I changed my perception from the 90 that weren't doing the work and I was just upset and annoyed and frustrated, if I turned myself attention to the 10% and focus on the 10%, I seem to be happy, joyous, and free. And what has happened through that was that my 10% of people became the 90% because all the people that surround me are service oriented about giving back to Cocaine Anonymous. Huh? And I got this girlfriend and I got this kid and I don't know how to be a dad. I never met my dad. You know, I don't know how to be a dad. And the women in Cocaine Anonymous taught me how to be a dad. I'll be forever indebted to you for teaching me how to be a dad. You openly shared about the feelings of the father of your child not showing up for visitation or through financial support. And through your pain, I learned how to be financially responsible and show up physically, emotionally, and mentally for my son, you know. And I'll just tell you 2 little stories. I got 6 minutes and 21 seconds. I got you, young. And that little boy, when he was a little boy, I put him on my head and I accidentally put his head in a ceiling fan, you know, and it was like bam, bam, bam. And I went to the back room and I said, God, I don't believe that you exist, but this old man, John, told me to pray. What the hell do I do? I just put my son's head in a ceiling fan and I heard a voice. It was loud. It was like, you need to call the doctor. You know, I was like, holy cow. I looked around. There was only me and my sponsee what happened was I got the directions from my doctor and I grabbed my kid and there was nothing wrong with him. He had a little bump on his head, you know. But what happened for me in that moment was that I cared more about another human being than I cared about myself. Huh? Selfishness and self-centeredness walked through the door on the 23rd of October of 2002. That sponsor who said, when I complained about service work, it said, we're gonna take you from a taker to a giver, man. That's what happened in that moment. You know, by continuing to show up and do the Zoom, continuing to show up and be the treasurer, continuing to show up and do all the service work that I complain about in my head, right? It doesn't matter, right, what my intentions are. What matters is my actions. You know, God is looking down upon me going, man, look at that little trier. Look at him try. He's doing the best he can, you know? And if I'm not doing the best I can, I have a program laid out in this book, steps 10 and 11, right? Get me in touch with where I fell short today, right? Where I fell short today. Like I have a goal right now this morning to do some sit-ups, do some planks, walk, ride my bike. I have this diet and read, right? And I got all of them except ride my bike. But my mind is like, yeah, you're a loser. You're a failure. You suck. You can't complete it. You know what I'm saying? And if I reflect in the 10th step to continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, when these crop up, what do? You guys know? You guys know what it says in there? I pray about it, right? I talk about it with you guys. I call my sponsor, say, hey, I'm feeling inadequate. I'm not feeling good enough, right? Do I owe an amends? How about a little bit of grace for self? How about a little bit of, you know what? You're not perfect and that's okay. You know, why not but little baby look in the mirror and just say, you know what? I love you, Pat. I'm my worst enemy. You know what I'm saying? I'm my worst enemy. And then I turn my thoughts and attentions to who I can help. Boom, man. I'm in the game. Bam. I'm like, you know what? I'll do better later, you know, because I have tonight. I got to do a little deal, you know, and so my son, he teaches me so much, man, that young man, you know, and, I can't. I'm just gonna be current with you guys. Yesterday I manufactured in the factory, the factory in the brain. You know what I mean? I manufactured that my son because he's an adult now. We and him are really close. We're really tight. You know, and I'm learning how to have a relationship with an adult child. Right? This is hard, you know. I don't know if anyone's ever been through this. This is hard, you know. And so I manufactured in my brain that I'm not loved. And what happened is that before you know it, within really short time, I manufactured this idea that my son doesn't love me. And I manufactured that my girlfriend doesn't love me. And I manufactured that my sponsor doesn't care for me. And I manufactured that, well, you know what? You're just a loser. You know what? I manufactured this idea that, you know what? Nobody in Cocaine Anonymous really cares for you anyways. Just like that. And I got sad. And I got afraid. And I felt lonely. And I'm sitting in my meeting last night. I go to my meeting where my sponsor is and my sponsorship family. And I walk in to the meeting. And the first person that I walk up says, Pat, I'm so glad you're here. And I walk up to my sponsor and my sponsor gives me a big hug and he says, I love you, son. I'm so glad you're here. And my sponsee brother came up to me and said, Pat, I missed you. Where you been? And my mind's thought, if you would have called, you would have known. You know what I mean? Because that's how it is, man. My alcoholism and my addiction centers in the mind. It wants to separate me from you far enough to isolate me far enough so it can say, you know what? Smoking weed's a good idea, right? Alcohol and drugs was the great persuader. But the persuader doesn't come from a crack rip. It comes from the separator that separates me from you. In the 12 and 12, it says our real problem is our inability to form a true bond with another human being. Not much hope. You know what I mean? because I have this thing inside of me, this thing that separates me from you. It isolates me from you. And so I wake up this morning and I say, God, please, if you see fit, allow me to help at least one drug addict, alcoholic today. And I go out into the world and do God's business. Because when I'm in the middle of the three sides of my triangle, I feel usefully whole, right? Unity, service, and recovery. And so I got right with God. I'm getting right with the fellowship, being right with you to tell you the truth about me, right? And now I'm being of service, but I'll go out into the world and be of service, you know? And if you're new, I don't know what I said or if it had any impact on your life, but I hope so. If not, I know that me being of service allows me to stay sober one day at a time. So I'm going to keep coming and keep being with you guys and keep saying yes to Young and keep making things right. And I love you all.
First up, we have Danny.
Hi guys, Danny Addict, Isaac, thanks for hosting, and Pat, wow, man, you really lit us up tonight. I had a smile on my face all the way through, and I really felt those words, man. Thank you so much for coming. I loved what you said, and I related so much. You had us laughing quite a few times throughout your share. My question. I've just been talking to some guys that I'm working with about the three legacies, and we're going to set a meeting up once a month where we look at where we're all at. We hold each other accountable, see where we're at in all of the program, you know, in the fellowship, in service, and in the steps. So my question to you is, in the three legacies, Pat, has there been any side of the triangle that you've struggled with over the years, and also, what's the importance of remaining in the middle of the triangle and the circle? And Pat, once again, thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Danny. To be honest with you, the biggest problem I have with any of the three legacies of our triangle is the unity. You know what I'm saying? Because you guys hurt my feelings all the time because I'm a sensitive guy. You know what I mean? I'm a very sensitive guy. You know, and, some of you don't have your cameras on. I know it's because you don't like me. You know, I create BS, right? And so, I don't need to call you guys today. And you know what? I build a case on my sponsor and he wasn't sensitive to my needs, you know, and so the hardest part for me is the union, is our fellowship. I've always been, I was a big book thumper for a long time. I've toned that down, but the recovery component, I feel like I've always been in the game. I've always been a service. I've always been helping others. They used to tell me when I was new, they said, get out of self, help others, which is a selfish action, right? But when I was new, it trained my feet. It taught me that anytime trouble comes, I go be of service, right? Because when I'm of service, I get out of myself, right? And the more I focus on my problems seem to get worse. You know what I mean? But when I help you and I step out of my problems, it allows God to come in and take care of my problems, right? So the more of you, the less of me, the better it is. And so, I've always felt that service has been locked on, recovery's been, but it's the fellowship, and I'll tell you, people in time I've been hearing lately, they're like, you're teaching me the importance of the fellowship, and I'm thinking, oh my God, because internally I'm thinking it's the hardest part for me. You know what I mean? Having a relationship with you is the hardest part with me, and so I thank God for the steps that allow me to see my own stuff, to see my mistakes, and to allow you the grace to make your own mistakes. You know what I mean? I put you as you should be perfect. That's not fair, so that's it.
Thanks, Danny, for your question. Charles W., you're up next.
Hey, my name's Charles. I'm an alcoholic. I don't know how I'm supposed to identify in this group, but anyway, I'm here and I'm in recovery. And thanks, Pat. I love you, buddy. I'm looking at moving away. I've got this great opportunity to go somewhere and do something really cool. I'm not going to be super far, but I know you've gone through this recently with your son, and so I'm thinking a lot about. I want to ask about what this process of, like you talked about people in Alcoholics Anonymous, women in Alcoholics Anonymous taught you how to be a dad, and like what that's been like, and sort of letting him go on his journey, and how you've been navigating that.
Oh my gosh, Charles, thanks for asking. So me and Charles went to high school together. We've been friends for a long time and in sobriety. So I love you very much, brother. Good to see you. And oh man, the process of letting go of my son has been me and him are really close. We've done everything together. And and I think that he should tell me every area of his life. You know, he should call me and tell me, "Hey dad, I'm going to my friend's house," like he did after school, and he's in college, and that's just not the reality, you know what I mean? And so what I'm really seeing is that I have this emotional, maybe it's unhealthy emotional dependency upon him to make me feel good about me. And so much of my identity as a person was identified as being a father, and so it's a lot for me, a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of looking at like, okay, I'm focusing out on what I perceive to be something, which is just a perception. 9.9% of the time it's not true. And I'd reach out to him and go, "Hey dude, I'm having this thought." And he's like, "Dad, you're way off the beam," And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So having the courage to ask and looking like what I, think is a dummy, has really been able to help me see that my perception with my relationship with him is not how I perceive it to be. And so, a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, a lot of reflection, a lot of intentional meditation, of being mindful and direct in meditation of what I want to see and what I want to hear. And not like what I want to, as in like me masterminding what it is, but like being intentional on getting information that is, and then connecting myself with men that are one, sensitive and willing to talk about this pain. That idea of like, hey, get over yourself, go help someone doesn't work for me. It just doesn't, it works for some guys, but it doesn't work for me. Like I need to know that you've been where I've been, you feel like I feel, right? And what you're doing to get through it, is super important. So, those are some things, but I'm here. I take a phone call anytime for me, brother.
Thank you, Charles, for your question. Ray, please come in.
Hello, I'm Ray. I'm an addict. Thank you for the meeting. Thank you, Pat, for an incredible share. I really loved the story about your sponsor. He sounds like a really inspirational man. And I'm glad you shared that story, so thank you. I wanted to ask you, you talked about like your thoughts, having thoughts and turning into 1,000 thoughts. And is that something that still happens to you now, later on in recovery? And how do you deal with that? How do you use the program to help with that?
I really appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, I'm a nail biter. I don't know if you can see. They're all gone. 2 of them hurt, so I still have the thing, the book talks about this nervous disposition. I have a sponsor who really understands this, I have like our topic last night in our meeting. Well, it came up like people were like, "I've never had it so good." Okay. I've never had it so good either. Like I came off of Skid Row, right? I was 98 pounds. I hadn't showered in 6 months, right? Like I was homeless. I own a house today. I own a car today. I've never had it so good, physically, but the outside is outside, right? It's the internal condition, right? And so with the mind, the obsessive mind, main problem, the alcoholic addict centers in the mind, right? And so it's creating those scenarios. And so what I do today is a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, a lot of talking to my sponsor, a lot of service work, right? Like I used to live in a place of ego and judgment of people that were like, that openly talked about this stuff. If I didn't have this, then I wouldn't need to. Alcohol and drugs aren't a problem. I've been sober 23 years. Right? That's not the problem. Once you remove it, once I'm physically sober, now I'm stuck with the emotional and the mental. Alcoholism's a mental health issue, and alcohol and drugs are but a solution. So, and so I have a sponsor who understands, and we talk about stuff, we talk about what we're doing today, and we get centered, and we have accountability, and I don't need a babysitter. It's not like this all the time, but it'll just, everything's great, everything's good. And then all of a sudden I'm like, whoop, and so I've been able to learn how to be open and honest and not isolate myself and live in this egotistical place and judgment of better than the rest of the people in CA. And so that's it.
Thanks, Ray, for your question. Ollie, please come in.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac. Hi, everyone. I'm Ollie. I'm a recovered addict. Thanks, Pat. That was a wonderful share. So much kind of, I was with you, and I was like, yes, I've done that a bit, and I don't know, I was just kind of on this real journey with you, kind of experiencing a lot of different emotions and thoughts, and yeah, it's beautiful. My question is, I was someone who was really quite shy on the matter of prayer and meditation when I first came in, and felt quite confused by it, and maybe quite hesitant to do it. What advice would you give to people who are maybe new and maybe struggling with the idea? And second part, what do you do today to kind of keep it kind of fresh and exciting and new? Thanks.
I appreciate it, Ollie. So I had a friend of mine. He said, give yourself 5 minutes to be late to anything, and in that 5 minutes, practice breathing. And I was like, but I think all the time. You know what I mean? I don't know how to, I don't know how to like meditate. Like my mind is, and he said, I think too. And I perceived him to be like really spiritual guy. You know what I mean? I thought he just meditated and was, for, 10 minutes and had never had a thought, and he said, just discontinue the thought. Notice, hey, got a thought, let it go and just refocus on your breath. And so I started to do that. So I always suggest to guys I sponsor, just do 2 minutes a day. You know what I mean? Do 2 minutes a day and just focus on your breathing, and that's it, And so once we get 90 days it takes to get a habit, once we get it, we're in the game, 90 days, 6 months. All of a sudden I'm watching guys I sponsor, and they're sending me like quotes. They're like, oh my God, this guy's awesome. And I put this into my meditation. And so once the habit, boom, kicks in, then they start exploring, and they get into books, and they get into things. And that's been my experience, Spirituality of Imperfection. I don't know if anyone's read it. It's a great book, outside, reading, but they just came out with a new book, and it's good, and it talks about the experience. And then I bring that into meditation, right? And so that allows it to be fun and fruitful and being intentional on meditation. And, I'm not a religious guy, but I have a deep, profound relationship with God that comes and goes. And, right. It's kind of agnostic-ish, but, I don't know. What keeps me going is just discipline. I wake up in the morning, and my eyes immediately when they wake up, I go into prayer, and I go into some reading and some writing that I do. And then I do 5 minutes of breathing, and it gets stale and it gets stagnant. And if it gets stale and gets stagnant, then I change things up. And so 90 days to build a habit. That's kind of my teaching to guys I sponsor, just to get 90 days in.
Great question. Thanks, Ollie. Last but definitely not least, we have Andrew. Please come in.
Alcoholic Andrew, thank you, Isaac. I'm not loose. Wow, allowed on the ship. Pat, I was expecting a different Pat, but you spoke some deep truths here. You shared some deep stuff here. I remember they told me, stack chairs, set up the rooms. Well, there are 3 large rooms and mega coffee pots, and I'm not enjoying this crowd, this fellowship. And I did that for years. But finally, I had to get out of myself. I sort of knew that my favorite thing to do is stay on the couch and listen to all the threads that go up here. Sort of like Jim and his whiskey and milk. Yes, I too have a case of rest my nerves. I never know when fear's going to come. Like I'll wake up from a dream that's so beautiful, yet scare me in the conscious world. So I identify with those particular isms. You know, I've always been a nervous Andrew. You know, I have doubt and I have, what do they call that? Doubt and, just whatever. My question, and I'm always have a question. Can you tell me anything at all about an experience through others or just alone? Anything that just intuitively opened your mind, changed your thinking on some attitude or thought?
It's a great question, Andrew. Intuitively. Oh my God, I'm speechless. Usually I'm fired up. Intuitively, keep thinking intuitively knew how to handle situations that just baffle me. Yeah, so it was through an amends. I went to New York. So my son was looking at 3 colleges. One was in New York, one was in LA, and I didn't realize that I was manipulating him to be in LA. I thought I was being supportive, you know. I didn't realize that I was afraid to lose my son, and so me and his mom were battling, and she was manipulating in her own way and I was manipulating in my own way, and we were driving and I didn't know how to handle the situation. And I was driving and she rolls her eyes at me when I talk, and I think I'm a saint. I don't realize that I'm smugging her or doing anything. And so she rolled her eyes the second time, and I looked in the rearview mirror. She was in the back seat, and I basically told her that she needed to grow the F up, and she acts like a child, and everyone's crying in the car. Well, they're crying, not me. And so I knew I needed to make an amends, and I talked to my sponsor. He's like, yeah, you owe an amends. And so I say, okay, I'll make the amends, and I don't do it for 3 days because I want to punish her, you know. I don't realize that I want to punish her, you know. And so I make this amends to her finally, and she said to me, she said, do you know that I'm afraid too? Just like that. You know what I mean? And then she told me she never wanted me to treat her that way again. And so I said, okay. And so we went to New York, and we're sitting in New York, the school that he wants to go to, not the school that I want him to go to or the school his mom wants him to go to. And we're sitting there and I'm overwhelmed. And I'm like, this thought to myself intuitively knew that this was a school that he was supposed to be at. But if I hadn't done the reflection of my own behavior, my own manipulation, my own fear, made it right with his mom, I don't feel that I would have been present enough to be able to access that power, which is God, which is the intuitive self. And I sitting in there and I just started to cry because I knew this was exactly where he was supposed to be. And so he's finishing up his first year in Manhattan in New York at the Fashion Institute of Design, or for Fashion and Design at FIT, Fashion Institute Technology, and he's finishing up, and he's like excelling, and he's like loves it, and he's all in. He's spending 40 hours a week in the studio on his own time outside of school, and he's vibrant and he's loving it. So that would be one of those experiences.